waliona polisi wanawazuia. Kuna mtu mmoja tu alisema watachoma gari, na kweli wakachoma hiyo gari.
Yet another tanker tragedy. 7 die in a tanker explosion along the Nakuru-Eldoret highway.
Mtu akifikisha miaka 65 kwenda nyumbani hata mpira hawezi kucheza.
And Moses Kuria's strategy. New Gatundu South MP plans to block Raila's 2017 presidential bid.
Kona miaka 12. Nikiingia asubuhi na kujanga na badilisha. Na vaizi tunazitanga gwanda nguo ya kazi.
Plus, from trash to treasure, 5,000 Dandora slum dwellers eke out a living from the dump site. And defying all odds, goat rearing in the most unlikely place.
KTN Weekend Prime with Yvonne Okwara.
A very good evening to you. It is the 17th day of August 2014. Sunday it is. I hope your weekend has been great and you're ready to start off the week. We will give you the best news and the headlines as you prepare for that. And also in this bulletin, Mock the Week with Wilson Buru is coming up, and that comes after Checkpoint tonight. You heard him here yesterday with Mashirima Kapombe. He is proposing a law to stone gay foreigners in the country. It's being called the Stone the Gays Bill. He will be here and we will be discussing more on that. So keep your comments coming in. The hashtag is Checkpoint. The hashtag is Checkpoint on Twitter. 22155 is our SMS number. Let's get to the top stories. Tonight, we start off our bulletin on a tragic note. 6 people died on the spot while another succumbed to injuries in hospital after a fuel tanker exploded while victims were busy siphoning fuel. The tanker had been involved in an accident just a few minutes before the residents of Kamara near Makutano Junction on the Eldoret-Nakuru Road decided to make a quick kill. It is alleged that one of the people lit a matchstick after police restrained them from further siphoning the fuel.
According to eyewitnesses, the incident happened at around 9 p.m. when the driver of the petrol tanker lost control while avoiding a head-on collision with another lorry. The tanker overturned and landed in a ditch. Residents milled around the lorry to siphon fuel. Youths engaged the police in running battles before one of the residents allegedly produced a matchbox and set the petrol tanker on fire, causing a huge explosion.
Kuna lori askari ilikuwa nachunga hapa, walianza kuokoa hii mafuta. So vile mafuta ilienda kwa mtaro, sijui watu wameanza kuchoma kutoka mtaro. Lakini dereva na tandiboi ya gari hawajakuwa kitu.
Kufuatia hiyo moto, watu 5 wameweza kupoteza maisha yao na wengine wamejeruhiwa. Hatujaweza kujua ni wangapi wako mahospitali, lakini tutaenda kuangalia ni wangapi wameumia.
The victims were rushed to various hospitals in Nakuru, Molo and Ravine, some with severe burns. 7 victims of the explosion were admitted at the Ravine District Hospital, some of them with burns on the legs, hands and face. One person is said to have died on Sunday afternoon.
Watu wengi waliungua sana. Vile ile moto ilianza tu hivi, ndio nikapata nafasi ya kutoroka. Sasa sijui wengine wenye waliungulia huko. Tulikuwa wasaba tu wenye tulikuwa tumepatana kwa hospitali ambapo tulisaidiwa hapo hivi.
Looting and siphoning of fuel along the busy Nakuru-Eldoret highway after fuel tanker accidents has become a norm. In the year 2009, at least 133 people lost their lives in Sachangwan, few kilometers from where last night's accident occurred.
Sad state of affairs there. Let's move to matters politics. Gatundu South Member of Parliament Moses Kuria has said he will front a referendum campaign that will, among other things, restrict the age of presidential candidates to 65 years and below. Now, in what seemed like planned efforts to block Raila Odinga's 2017 presidential bid, Kuria, who joined Parliament this month, seems prepared to take the Jubilee Code rivalry to the next level.
The newly elected Member of Parliament for Gatundu South, Moses Kuria, has suddenly hit the ground running, and not in a way that the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy Code will like. He says he will set in motion a counter-referendum process, and one of the issues to be addressed
Mtu akifikisha miaka 65 kwenda nyumbani hata mpira hawezi kucheza. Na hiyo ni jambo tutaleta katika referendum yetu.
Efforts to set an age ceiling on those seeking the presidency will be viewed as an affront on CORD leader Raila Odinga, who will be way past 65 by the 2017 general election.
Kama mtu analeta referendum ndio impeleka mpaka uchaguzi na hata amepata wajukuu, si ukae nyumbani ukae na wajukuu wako.
On Saturday, Raila declared that he will contest in the 2017 presidential race, adding that retiring from politics should be the people's wish and not those of Jubilee leaders. Kuria has been vocal in his opposition of CORD's calls for a constitutional referendum and insists that the opposition coalition is not genuine in its push. The referendum debate has continued to gather pace, and those opposing it have been rallying Kenyans behind their cause.
Sasa ati wanataka kupeleka mambo ya mashamba referendum. Sasa mimi nauliza wewe umeenda kuiba shamba ya mwananchi. Sisi tumekupata umeiba shamba ya mwananchi, unasema ati tupeleke referendum. Atupeleke referendum, wewe rudisha shamba ya mwananchi, hakuna referendum.
It is not clear how serious Moses Kuria is with his new referendum push or how much support he will garner from his Jubilee coalition. Ben Kitili, KTN.
Still on politics, and Jubilee is accusing CORD of being insincere with their push for a referendum. Senators Kithure Kindiki and Kipchumba Murkomen say the living standards of Kenyans would worsen if the central government is pushed to increase monies sent to the counties. Speaking in Teso, Busia County, the two leaders say the central government will be forced to increase taxation in order to meet the financial demands imposed by CORD and the Council of Governors. Francis Ontomwa reports.
A difference of just hours, same town, same mission, but the players cut from a different cloth. It was the turn of Jubilee to stir the same waters the CORD coalition engaged in yesterday. After CORD's Raila Odinga closed camp Jubilee in a seemingly counteractive fashion, we're here in Busia to diffuse the referendum gospel. And it is at the St. Thomas ACK Yamagoro Church that provided that stage.
Wale wanaitisha referendum wakiendelea kuitisha referendum kwa sababu ni haki yao ya kikatiba. Vile bunge itafanya na Senate, lazima turudi kwa budget tena. Hiyo pesa sasa, kwa sababu referendum iko, barabara zisimamishwe, tuende tukapige siasa.
Wananchi waambiwe ukweli kwamba pesa ikiongezwa ikuwe 45%, taxes itaongezwa kwa 45%. So that wakati sasa hiyo pesa itakuwa imeongezwa, tutaongeza hata kuku tax, mambo ya tax, maneno ya mayai, ng'ombe tax, bullfighting tax.
The swords were drawn as the government coalition played down the referendum bid by CORD as blunted waste of funds, insisting that the opposition had an axe to grind in the debate, asking Kenyans to ignore their calls.
Tusichanganye wakati wa kupanda na wakati wa kufanya nini? Wa kuvuna. Referendum inaweza kuwa labda ni kitu mzuri,
na tunaheshimu hiyo katiba. Tunasema kama kuna jambo yenye inataka irekebishwe, hata tungoje baada ya mwaka 10 tuweke under the wakati ya kupiga kura.
The push by governors to have more funds to counties also provided fodder for throwing political punchlines. According to the lawmakers, devolution was not under threat as insinuated by CORD. Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen argued that more funds will push up taxes on Kenyans.
Pesa ikiongezwa lazima tutaongeza kutoza ushuru wananchi. Lazima tukue careful kwa hiyo maneno kama tunaenda mbele. Na kabla hatujasema tuongeze pesa, tunataka ile pesa ambayo imeletwa kwanza tuseme imetufanyia kazi gani, imetumiwa sawa sawa.
And even as the referendum beats forward, for some observers, the meeting was a reaching out scheme for the Jubilee leaders, mainly drawn from the URP party for a region that voted overwhelmingly for the coalition. This as the Deputy President William Ruto's messages came in plenty from the foot soldiers.
Maji kwanza ama siasa ya referendum kwanza.
As the CORD coalition steps up its campaign to have 1 million signatures that will pave way for the referendum, the Jubilee wing, on the other hand, remains adamant that the referendum is ill-intentioned and wrong-timed. Francis Otomwa, KTN Weekend Prime.
The Council of Governors is dismissing calls for a strike by all county workers as called by KOTU. The county chiefs say KOTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli's call is misinformed, and they're now urging all workers to ignore that call.
Monday morning and services at various county offices may come to a halt if county workers will heed to calls by KOTU to paralyze operations occasioned by a delay in remittance of their July salaries.
Health services cannot be devolved. Mambo ya afya ya mwana wa Adam huwezi kudevolve.
These are the sentiments from the KOTU boss Francis Atwoli that have angered county chiefs. They say Atwoli should have sought audience with the governors before asking workers to down their tools. They argue Atwoli is misinformed and that all counties except Mombasa have already sent the delayed salaries to the employees' bank accounts.
Atwoli should probably have tried to get proper facts. Because as you know, the whole issue of devolution is not only on health services, but on all wider issues.
Most of the counties have tried their best to pay. So he's trying to blow this thing out of proportion.
Governors say the delay was occasioned by the process of legislation in regard to the just signed Revenue Allocations Bill 2014-2015. They blame Atwoli for inciting workers, given that the counties could not access cash before the president signed the bill into law.
The people are working well. It is the unions and the Ministry of Health that is giving us a headache.
The county heads also maintain that all the 47 governments are fully committed to the devolution of health services.
Without a doubt, that kid will start running. All it needed was patience from all of us. And remember, this issue of counties not being able to manage health services started from the first month.
We are there to listen to them. And we are saying we are fully committed to ensuring that the health functions are effectively and efficiently discharged at the county levels.
They are now asking workers to ignore the strike call and report to work come Monday without fail. Francis Mtelaki, KTN.
Indeed, we'll be watching those events tomorrow, so do stay with KTN for details on that front. Now, they call themselves the Nairobi Hustlers, and they could well be each and every one of the 5,000 people who eke a living from the dump site in Dandora. KTN's Ian Wafula spent a day with some of them. Let's now hear their story.
In October 2013, the Dandora dump site was a battleground for rival gangs fighting over the control of the garbage trade, a battle so bad that it went on for 2 days, with reported cases of gunshots filling the air, not from the police, but from the very guns of the gangs. Close to 1 year later, taking a walk across the 30-acre piece of land, there is a huge sense of calm and productivity and a rather choking ambience from the garbage stench. Our guide elaborates a day's program. Close to 2,000 tons of garbage is collected from Nairobi and its environs daily. Most of it, if not all, somehow ends up at the dump site. But what is considered as trash back in the city is treasure for a group of over 2,000 people who make their way to the dump site every day, some for as long as their entire lives. The trucks come in, dump the waste, and the assortment begins, unearthing cartons, glasses, plastics, and scrap metal, after which they are weighed and set aside for sale to recycling companies.
Na hii ndio kampuni yangu. Na niko na miaka 12. Nikiingia asubuhi na kujanga na badilisha. Na vaa hizi tunazitanga gwanda, nguo ya kazi.
And just like any other company, the people here have their roles too. Truck drivers, brokers, garbage sorters, who form the majority, and the lady from the cafeteria who ensures that everyone gets a meal. Well, not for free, of course. A group of ladies gather around one of their own who had collapsed, the undertones suggesting that she was diagnosed with malaria but could not afford to be away from work. We're requested to give a contribution for a transfer to hospital.
Tunajitana kaka meeting. Tunaambia na huyo mtu anadai bili ya do fulani. Kuna wala wakubwa tu, sisi wakubwa tunapanga, tunaona hiyo do ni 100.
Often portrayed as one of Nairobi's most dangerous zones, the Dandora dumpsite is a safe haven to thousands, with such optimism and positive energy being exuded from its dependents. All they're asking is for the county and national governments to involve them in the rehabilitation of the dumpsite and also help in changing the mentality of this site. Majority of the people here fear being associated with the dumpsite due to the perception of the outside world.
Kama ni mwizi amechukua kitu yenyewe ile ngambo ya korokocho amepotelea huku, siwa tunamshika na tunampea na maybe kwa polisi ama tunampea tu katocha ketu tu kadogo hivi kachai kadheri hivi tunamwachilia. Na kama ni maneno ya kurepio hiyo raping hiyo hapa kuna hata kidogo.
But they're more concerned about their future. The walls being put up by the county government ironically give them a sense of insecurity. Signs of commencement of the dumpsite rehabilitation.
Hebu piga picha asubuhi, ukiamka asubuhi, umekuja kampuni yako, ukuta imewekwa gate, unaweza kimbilia wapi? Nilikuwa nauliza mtu kama Kidero, ajue hii dump iko na zaidi ya watu 5,000.
Nimekuja hapa nikiwa msichana, na saa hii niko na watoto 3, na wote nimelelea hapa. Mmoja ako form 3, huyo mwingine ako form 1, na niko na mwingine class 7.
For now, life goes on as usual here, and so we leave our guide to return back to work with the promise that someone somewhere has heard their plea. Ian Wafula, KTN.
Some amazing things coming out of what nobody wants anymore. Okay, so let's take you to another inspiring story now. Jonathan Kiptum became the laughingstock when he bought 2 goats to supplement his family's milk demand. After all, he had broken the norm. His neighbors could not dream of consuming goat's milk. They had always drank the cow's milk. Today, Kiptum is a role model to the farmers in Anin village. Mercy Kandia has that story.
It's a spectacle in Anin village, Elgeyo Marakwet County. But 7 years ago, when Jonathan Kiptum brought 2 goats to supplement his family's milk demand, he became the laughingstock, breaking the norm to consume goat's milk instead of the cow milk that villagers here were used to.
Tangu nilipovuka hii mbuzi, maziwa nilipata, watoto wangu wakapata maziwa. Pia watoto wangu walisoma juu ya hii mbuzi.
Kiptum rears Kenya Alpine goats, a breed which, according to him, thrives in warm and temperate conditions, and each lactating goat produces up to 3 liters of milk per day, enough, he says, to sustain his now improved life.
Nasaanga mbili. So, kwa hivyo mina uzanga karibu mara mbuzi karibu 6 kwa mwaka.
The villagers warmed up to goat milk, one they term as highly nutritional. Some have emulated this. Like today, Kiptum takes these farmers around his farm, educating them on how the goats are fed and how to construct the pens, changing the norm to be known as goat breeders. With 1 Alpine goat being sold for 15,000 shillings, unlike the custom of 2,000 shillings per goat.
Sio kama wale wanafuata siku mchana wote na upate maziwa, wakati mwingine inaharibu vitu vya watu, lakini hii unafunga kwa nyumba, unalisha na unaenda shughuli zako zingine.
Niliona faida yake. Faida ya kwanza ni kwamba unalisha mahali kidogo na hiyo mbuzi inatosha kutoa maziwa yake. Ukiwa na shamba kidogo, the right choice kununua hii mbuzi ya maziwa sababu chakula yake sio sawa na ya ng'ombe.
From his Chemoy farm, Kiptum now supplies dairy goats in the entire North Rift and even South Rift regions, and the demand is growing and at times overwhelming. To curb this, he has lined up the customers and restricted the purchase to maximum 2 goats to enable many people acquire the goats.
Mbuzi ya kwanza nilitoa Nyeri. Nilitoa Nyeri mbuzi mbili.
There are 3 grades of Kenya Alpine goats: pedigree, appendix and intermediate, which retails at different prices depending on the grade. Marcy Kandia, KTN, Anin, Elgeyo Marakwet County.
Given me a few ideas there on some great goats, and he is now laughing last. Let's take you to our weekly segment on environmental matters now, and our attention today is on Matu in Machakos County. Following years of crop failure due to harsh climate, farmers are now changing tactics. In Kithimani area, farmers are reverting to traditional crops such as cassava, pigeon peas and millet to enhance food security. And as Rita Tinina reports on Eco Journal, some farmers are going a step further to add value to their traditional crops.
In Yata, Kithimani, Machakos County, maize farmers are counting their losses yet again. Another season, another crop failure due to inadequate rains.
Most prevalent crops which farmers used to plant, that is maize and beans, kept on failing. And farmers would have to rely on relief food.
But some farmers are not taking a gamble with the maize and beans in this perennially dry area. They are reverting back to drought-tolerant traditional food crops.
Ninaona iko na faida. Kukiwa iko changazi, mimi iko sawa. Hakuna chakula inakwenda kununua, chakula iko sawa.
We felt that we needed to reintroduce traditional crops which farmers had forfeited.
Standing out in the midst of the dry land in Kithimani is a patch of greenery. Mzee David Mwaliu's pigeon peas plantation. And by the look of things, the crop is thriving. Next to the plantation is Mzee Mwaliu's cassava, some of it ready to be harvested. Here, you will not find your ordinary cassava if size is anything to go by.
Sasa unajua kama hakuna mvua, ukipanda mahindi itakauka tu ikiwa iko chini. Lakini ubandaji wa kachapa, mvua hata ikiwa kitoko, inakuwa tu na mvua inaongoja mvua ingine.
Mzee Mwaliu made the big switch to traditional crops in the year 2009 and has not looked back since then. The cassava, he says, is not only drought resistant, it is not a favorite for pests.
Hii meoko iko kwa store kama hii, sasa iko kwa store. Hakuna kitu inaweza kula.
Mzee Mwaliu is not only in the business of selling cassava, pigeon peas, sweet potatoes and mangoes. He is also a recognized cassava seedling supplier.
Sasa hii mbegu ninauza puti moja shilingi 10.
He is among farmers who are part of a project being implemented by the Farm Practice Initiative aimed at enhancing food security in the area. The project, dubbed Pamoja Njaa Marufuku, being supported by ACT, advocates not only the growing but also consumption of drought-resistant crops such as cassava, millet and sorghum.
Najua watu wakipanda mahindi yasitoki siku hizi. Mvua ukipanda inastahimili ile jua iko na ni lazima upune.
The Muowakanani Kithendo Women's Group is reaping the benefits of growing traditional crops. The group is going one step further, adding value to the cassava by turning it into flour.
Tukiitoa kwa shamba, tunakatakata, zinakuwa ndogo. Tunaziosha kwa maji safi, inakuwa safi, tunazianika kwa siku 4. Siku 4 zikiisha, tunazipeleka kwa hiyo mashini ya kuchanga mahindi.
From their traditional crops, they can prepare a feast. There are cakes made of cassava, chapatis,
Hiyo una mix na unga ingine. Kama unataka kumix na wimbi, unapima kikombe moja ya wimbi, kikombe moja ya cassava.
Snacks such as crisps, deep-fried cassava, or if you like, their own version of chips, matoke, porridge to vegetables.
Sisi tulikuwa tunapanda mahindi. Kwa wakati huu tulikuwa tunaenda tu sokoni kununua chakula. Lakini tangu tuanze kupanda muo, hatujui soko ni nini.
And even the women agree it has not been easy trying to reintroduce the traditional crops back to the dining tables.
Walikuwa wanadhani ni chakula ya masikini, lakini muo sio chakula ya masikini. Muo ni chakula ya kila mtu.
With the adoption of drought-resistant crops, farmers in Yatta who hardly got any produce from their farms have kissed crop failure goodbye. They're not only guaranteed of a good harvest from their farms, they are also adding value to their produce. Rita Tinina, KTN, Yatta, Machakos County.
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Checkpoint, and today we are discussing legal issues versus moral issues and whether some of the issues that happen in society should be a matter of law or not. You may remember a story that may have not hit the headlines as many would have expected, when a man said he wants a law that would stone gays. Now, we will get to all of that, but I think that is what stood out. So please send your feedback to me at Yvonne Okwara at KTN Kenya. Please use the hashtag Checkpoint. I'll be looking out for your tweets. If you want to SMS, the number is 22155. Please send in your thoughts and we'll incorporate them in our discussion. With me to do this is Member of Parliament for Kiharu, Irungu Kangata, who is also the chair of the Anti-Gay Caucus in Parliament. And right next to him is the man of the moment, some would say, Edward Nyakeriga. Thank you for making the time. He's the legal secretary of the Republican Liberal Party and is behind that proposed law. And right next to me is Eric Gitari, who's a human rights lawyer of the Kenya National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. Edward, let's start with you. Tell us about the law. Everybody, of course, thinking stoning, and that Bible verse comes to mind. He who is without sin cast the first stone. But tell us, why stoning? And it's only foreigners, we believe?
Thank you for the question. The bill itself is not about the penalty. The bill is very good. It is meant to be a fundamental way of securing our society and from any infringement and intrusion by strange characters, like introducing such characteristics in our society and demeaning ways of life.
Do you believe that the laws in place are not enough? Because there is the acts on sodomy and criminalizing that.
The law that we have in place does not address specifically homosexuality. We have the penal code which deals with a cold city morality issue, but this one is specifically homosexuality, and specifically if you can look at the level we've gone to introduce some other issues that are not in these other laws. We have actually introduced more than what our penal code has.
Such as?
There is aggravated offenses, such that in homosexuality there is a claim that there is consent, there is, but you can. It is doubtful if consent can be between the attacker and the minor.
Okay.
There can be consent between a master and a servant. Such are aggravated.
Let's understand the stoning bit.
Yeah. The best way to express something is to say it loudly and clearly. the resentment that we have is said in such a clearest way, and the clearest way is stoning. This is strange. We have it. We don't have that. We don't have any memory that such practice started in Africa. This is Africa. We have to maintain, like our preamble, our culture. Yeah.
Okay. Irungu, let's bring you in. You are the leader of the anti-gay caucus in Parliament. What do you think of this law? He says it is strange, never has been seen in Africa, was possibly introduced by Westerners, and stoning is one of the best ways to express that. Do you agree?
Well, first and foremost, let me say the proposed remedy, in my own opinion, is too harsh. Personally, I think homosexuality is a mental illness, and when you have a situation where you have ill people, you don't stone them, you take them to a hospital. So therefore, I don't support the punishment that is being proposed by the new law. But I think, bottom line, homosexuality and lesbianism is wrong.
It's a mental illness based on what studies? Because there have been several studies that have said it's not a mental issue.
Well, several reasons. When it's come to the issue as to whether it is a mental study, it's a mental issue or not, it is something that is contested. There are some scholars who maintain it is, others don't. I think it is not a settled point of medicine. Be that as it may, I do not oppose homosexuality mainly on that account only. There are several reasons why I do oppose homosexuality.
Okay, and we'll come to you in just a moment to tell us what the anti-gay caucus in Parliament actually does. Eric, you're listening to this. Stoning is a way to express this, and mental illness, psychological, being counseled. What are your thoughts on this new bill?
The new bill is, as a lawyer, very unconstitutional. As a citizen, I think it's an embarrassment to our country, and it's taking Kenya a place that we do not belong. The World Health Organization, if I may appeal to my learned colleague, Irungu Kangatia, removed homosexuality from the list of diseases in 1992. The Kenya Psychiatry Association will tell you the same thing. Mr. Edward, we have worse things to deal with. When it comes to securing our society, I don't think you have concern for what's going on in our country in terms of security right now. I don't think you actually wrote this bill, and I'd want you to tell Kenyans right now who is hiring you as a gun to look for this attention and to do what you're doing right now.
Let me reply on that.
Okay.
No, let me reply on that, because to me that has been one of the most, I would say, absurd argument by the pro-gay lobby. They are trying to argue that my colleague here is being funded outside or by foreigners. Simple.
We are not saying it's foreigners.
Well, irrespective, maybe a person in Kenya or wherever. Are you trying to propose that Kenyans support gay in this country? Are you trying to propose that? No. Allow me to finish my argument. One of the reasons why I don't support gayism is simple. I am convinced 90-something% of Kenyans are against gayism. It is therefore dictatorial and unfair when you have a small segment of Kenyans trying to impose their views on the majority. This is a democracy. And if you are doubting as to whether Kenyans support gays or not, we take this issue to the referendum. So,
a democracy,
is this an issue you would be willing to have a referendum
on? If at all someone is trying to purport that Kenyans support gay, by the way, if Kenyans were to say
that is not what
we
you're
Kenyans
purporting.
Support gays, fine with me.
Okay.
We're not purporting that. We're not purporting that. We are saying that a democracy needs to be measured on how mature it is, on how it treats the minority. We could be at 2% in this country, but how this democracy treats us is going to be the measure of how mature we are as a Kenyan state to deal with difference and to tolerate people we do not necessarily understand, but they're part of our citizenry.
Good, thank you.
When you look, let me finish. When you look at the latest research that was funded by the Kenya Christian Lawyers Fellowship or the Kenya Christian Professional League, they say that 40% of Kenyans do not think that the government of Kenya should legislate or deal with homosexuals or homosexuality in any way. So as much as the statistics are there, they are telling because the margin of Kenyans who are very intolerant is reducing and shrinking.
Okay. Edward, I'd like to bring you in on this. He said this is possibly not something from you and you are a gun for hire. Would you like to respond to that?
Unless he has evidence, somebody's grand.
What does Article 7 of this bill propose? Tell me what Article 7 of your bill proposes, if you wrote it.
I wrote the bill.
What does Article 7 propose?
Unless you have the copy, I should not go
I have a copy.
Article by article.
I have a copy.
But all the same, what we are saying is, I'm the one who drafted the bill, and I know what it contains. I know the contents. But all the same,
to educate Kenyans on the proposed law.
All the same, what we are saying, we are a caring society. This is Kenya. We care about family, and there is an aspect of family that will be infringed.
Okay, Eric, let's just take this in a different way. For those who are against homosexuality in the country, they say you are trying to foist your way of life in people's faces, and that and even the law says, for example, the HIV/AIDS Prevention and Control Act expressly prohibits discrimination to persons in same-sex relationships, and that perhaps this is pushing it on a majority of people. Even in the run-up to the referendum in 2010, a majority of the Kenyans said this is not something they wanted, and some people take offense with the gay pride parades and saying, well, we heterosexuals, for example, do not foist their sexuality onto homosexuals, and that perhaps this is something that you are being a bit too aggressive about rather than just lie, live and let be?
The reason there is aggression towards a struggle for equality for gays is because we went ahead and took laws from the colonial government. We'd say that if you lay with person of the same sex, or if you have any intimate relations in the privacy of your bedroom, consenting adults, that's a crime. What this law has done is that it has informed public policy and public attitude towards persons who have the same sex orientation. The reason we try and speak about this thing is to remove the stigma that this law has created, to remove the prejudice that this law has created by criminalizing consensual adult sex in private.
What of those who say, look, it's fine, you can be homosexual, but they are not comfortable with it being in their faces, with the sort of parades and marches that we see, and that, you know, if you want to, and we'll get into the decriminalization of the law in just a minute, why do that if it doesn't seem like there's obvious discrimination?
There is obvious discrimination. The reason that we see parades and marches across the world, they're there to mark a certain significant event. In Kenya, I guess one of the parades that we have seen, or assemblies that we've seen on the streets, is that on May 17th, marking the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Transphobia, which is the day I was telling Mr. Kangatia that the World Health Organization struck down homosexuality from the list of mental diseases. And this is also reflected in the Uganda report that Museveni was sent for by a scientist. But moving forward, we are not actually asking to impose anything or any lifestyle or anyone. People are saying that whatever we want to do in the privacy of our bedroom, we don't want the state to get the microscope inside and ask what we are doing. We don't want to be told how to love and express our love when our love is not hurting anyone and when no one is being forced to get into this love. Irungu,
some say legislating on matters of morality is not the way to go with certain issues. Here's an example. Cheating on your wife is immoral, but it is not necessarily criminal. And that if we start legislating on matters such as that, and who knows, we'll go legislating into a lot of matters that strictly should be dealt with on a moral scale and not necessarily under the law.
That argument is very fallacious for several reasons. Number one, when you look at our statutes, you have so many so-called victimless crimes. And therefore, if you remove his, you can as well remove those other victimless crimes. For instance, we have what we call bestiality, sleeping with an animal. One can argue, no, this is my cow, this is my cat, I can as well sleep with it. We have, let's say, a drug law. One can argue, well, this is my cocaine, this is my weed, I don't see how the state is coming into this thing. We have even things like committing suicide. We have things like disturbing a dead body. One can argue these are issues where there is no complainant, is a victimless crime. I can as well do away with it. But the law looks at the aspect of the public good, notwithstanding. There may not be a complainant or a victim. That's number one. Number two, the issue of sexuality is not purely an issue of two people only. It affects society in very profound ways. How? We are here because of procreation. He is here because his mother and father made love and he came into this earth. So it is to the interest of society to protect procreation, to protect reproduction. No, allow me to argue my point.
Okay. All right.
If we were to allow gayism to come into vogue, society may as well face extinction. It may face extinction. For instance, there is no probability of him siring children. He has now died technically. So therefore, no.
Would you like to respond to that?
So
okay, all right. Okay, Rungu, we hear you.
No, look here.
We hear you. We also need Eric to respond and Edward to comment.
He's learned a lot of wit in Parliament.
Okay.
Sir, it seems you do not read government policy documents. The National AIDS Control Council releases statistics to the government, showing them, the government, how it has affected policies towards prevention, care, management of HIV in Kenya. Interesting statistics point that 60% of men who have sex with men in Kenya are married and have children. So your argument of reproduction, procreation is flat, a lie. 60% of men having sex with men in Kenya are heterosexual in marriages and have children. 2, the fact that I'm gay does not mean that I cannot sire children. I have spermatozoa. I am still fertile.
Okay.
All right? I'm free. If you look at evidence and statistics when making laws, you'll be guided to see that internationally, actually a lot of gay and lesbian persons are taking up to care for children through even other ways like IVF.
Okay, all right. Eric,
one point. The more reason why we should fight gays, because statistics which he is quoting show gays tend to be more promiscuous. When you look at a heterosexual and a gay person, no, that's not a fact. Number two, there's a correlation between gayism and drugs. They tend to be more drunk. It is there. It is there.
This is propaganda and lies that is spreading. It is not based on any evidence.
We would like you to cite some of these studies that you are talking about, just so that we are sure that we're speaking on the basis of fact.
Yes.
And not, sort of popular opinion.
Propaganda.
All right.
Propaganda.
Okay, Edward, I'd like to ask you, some would say that, stoning gays isn't necessarily dealing with the root cause of homosexuality. That seems to be a shortcut to it. You stone one today, but you haven't solved the problem of if in your mind it is something that can be solved. Aren't there other ways of doing this? I know you are a man of religion. Could it not be perhaps taking a look at the morality of the issue and speaking to them? Does stoning really end the problem for you?
Yeah. What I know is that nobody is interested with a liveless body. It is not in anybody's interest. But look at the effect it has to society. Even in our Constitution, Article 53, there is a tendency, if these people, they have children, if it says that people having a relationship between man and man have children, are they going to expose them to this harmful?
Okay, but does stoning then, you're still not answering my question, does stoning them then solve the problem of homosexuality in your opinion?
I know it is very
deterrent. If you stone one, will it end homosexuality?
I know.
Because it's a matter of feeling, if you understand.
Actually, those people have no reason of committing an offense. And actually, stoning is not a appeal. It is just to deter. It is not actually the interest. That is a penalty which is not.
And this would be stoning to death? This would be stoning to death? Is that what you're proposing?
We propose stoning to death in public.
Okay. What of the Bill of Rights that says everybody has a right to life?
The Bill of Rights, it is very clear that even the drafters were aware that one wants to enjoy his rights in society. But if you pollute the same society that you want to stay in, will you have a society?
But I think the rights state that you can exercise your rights as long as they do not infringe on somebody else's rights.
They infringe on society. And actually,
tell us how.
There is the state. The state should protect the family, and if it is infringed, then it means the rights of the other people are affected, and therefore they should be stopped.
The state should protect family by making sure that we have social welfare benefit, by making sure that families have adequate sanitation, education, livelihood, protection of family. And I read your bill, sir, and I must tell you, you can do a better job if you're a lawyer. It speaks about the traditional heterosexual family. It's a polygamous family. You're an SDA person. Isn't that against your faith? And number two, when you speak about the state having, or society having rights that are being infringed by these homosexuals, I don't see these rights at all. I want you to tell us what these rights are, because I can't see them.
I can tell you the rights. One, the right to family. You see, the Constitution, when it talks about family, it clearly states it's about a man, a woman, and of course it goes without saying a children. So to the extent you are trying to propagate something that is antithesis of a family, you are indeed, yes, you are indeed,
what about the
you are indeed negating.
What about the traditional female-to-female marriages that are allowed?
Good, I love you for that.
I'm not saying they're sexual. I'm not saying they're sexual, but the definition of a family, yeah, they're not sexual, but the definition of a family negates that.
Okay,
it does not.
Okay.
Female to female. Marriage under the tradition was not sexual, it was a relationship to get children.
What about the anthropological and historical accounts of healers in traditional African society who are two-spirited and are known to be homosexuals?
No, we don't have such kind of history.
Have you read your history?
We don't have such kind of history.
Because we do oral history. Have you looked at the anthropological accounts of the Mugawes of the Meru?
Of course, this is what happens.
The Dagaras in Burkina Faso.
What he is trying.
The Zanders of Botswana. This man is a lawmaker who is not being driven by evidence and empirical research to inform the policy that is starting from that house. And it's a tragedy that they are really, really belittling the Constitution of Kenya, because the people who drafted this bill that this man is tabling here are the same people who want to subvert the Constitution of Kenya.
All right, Irungu, I need you to now give us your final comments. We're out of time.
We take it to the referendum. You win.
We're not asking
we support it.
Because the Attorney General, when you proposed the decriminalization,
and this
gentleman.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, Irungu, I know it's getting heated, but when the AG responded to your petition to decriminalize it, said that perhaps it should go to Parliament. Is this something that Parliament would be willing to discuss?
Well, to us, the position is the current statutes which are there are sufficient. So therefore, to that extent, I may disagree with my
All right. Edward, sorry, I'm so sorry. We need to cut you off because we're running out of time. Edward, your final comments on this one, and if you were to meet Eric somewhere, would you stone him to death? Oh, sorry, it's only for foreigners, isn't it?
No, not even that. It is through a judicial process. It is not, the public will be educated that nobody should stone another. It is through a judicial process.
Okay. So they'll follow the due process of court, be convicted, and then stoned to death.
Yeah.
Eric?
I'm very confident in our constitution, in our republic. I'm very certain that this bill will not pass in this country. And I have a lot of confidence in our parliament and in the institution that we have created in the constitution. And I hope for the very best. I have a lot of faith in that. And two, for the people who are watching, who feel afraid because of the stone threat, I want to assure everyone that Kenya is a good country to live in, to thrive in, and to be of realizing their full potential.
Irungu, just very quickly, as the chair of the Anti-Gay Caucus, will this bill see the light of day in the House?
No, for that reason that it is proposing something that for us we think the current statutes are enough. But we strongly believe so long as Kenyans still don't support gays, it should not be drawn into our throats. Unless
gentlemen, I wasn't starting the conversation all over again.
I have spoken to more than it is about 78 MPs, and out of those, about 2 said they will not support it. I don't know that The number 78 will increase or go lower.
Okay.
I have a list somewhere.
All right, we will wait and see how this one goes. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making the time to be with us in studio. I will be sampling some of your views. Lukoya Atwoli, thank you very much for your tweet. You wrote an article actually in a local daily today. You say your panel clearly exemplifies my argument. If you didn't read Lukoya's article, please take a look at it for more insights into that. More of your feedback on Checkpoint and also Mock the Week after this break. Heated debate. It's time to relax a little bit. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. We've all had one of those moments when all we want is to understand what the doctor just said. But even the doctors and their weird terminologies may not be in a position to explain how cow dung makes a man. Wilson Buru has all that and more in this week's episode of Mock the Week.
The 33rd week of the year. Remember this?
Kwa nini hiyo watu naanza kutahiri sisi kwa barabara? Sisi tunaharibiwa kwa kimila mtu mwingine tofauti. So kwa nimekataa. Lakini wakanishika na nguvu, sasa nikabidi tu nikakubali.
If you don't, let me try and sum it up for you. These guys, who are Turkana by the way, were furious because some guys from Bukusuland wanted to initiate them into manhood using tactics they do not quite approve of without having had prior dialogue to that effect. Got it? Good. We're on the same page now. It turns out that the Bukusu were just a little bit overexcited because it's August, and traditionally, this is the time when boys have to become men. And being a man is no mean feat. It's a rigorous, painful, and surprisingly extremely smelly process.
Kwanza tutampaka kinyesi cha yule ng'ombe ambaye amechinjwa.
Let's pause this thing right there for a moment. I'm not an expert in matters of cultural initiation into manhood, but isn't not smelling like cow excrement one of the things one is supposed to be taught as a man?
Alafu anasabwa kofi ili kumpatia ile mori ya kuwa mjasiri.
Yes, to be a man, you've got to be able to take it like a man. And after taking it like a man, another important lesson one has to be taught while being initiated into manhood is to lie through your teeth.
Mimi kusikiako uchungu. Mimi niliona tu vizuri hata sikujua kama wamekata. Angalia wakati walivishia frame ndio maana nimetairisha.
But the reason these two men did not quite feel a thing is probably because the cut was voluntary.
John Shege Ngoiri's private parts were chopped off by a drinking buddy after he allegedly refused to buy him drinks.
Alinipiga. Alafu kafanya vile alifanya huku chini.
A drinking spree gone horribly wrong. There's absolutely nothing funny about anyone having their private parts chopped off, but there are a few curious issues arising from this situation here. Issue number one. What sort of half-witted, malicious nincompoop goes chopping off another man's private parts just because they've refused to buy them anything? Not to mention that that's a completely disproportionate reaction. It's like shooting somebody in the face just because they nudged you in the ribs.
I had undergone a total traumatic orchidectomy. There was a hernia injury at the mid-penile shaft.
And that brings us to issue number two. Why can't doctors just speak English? I mean, you go to a doctor, you have a running nose, you're sneezing a bit, and the doctor says, I'm sorry, you seem to be suffering from an acute viral nasopharyngitis, which is basically an infectious disease of the upper respiratory tract, which is primarily affecting your nose. Really? I think we need to introduce English as a compulsory subject in all medical schools, because then our good doctor here would have said,
both testes had been chopped off completely.
And as we continue to hope that the assailant in this case is arrested and sent to prison for a very, 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 very long time, Bernard Kiala was facing the threat of being chopped off the list of deputy governors.
And it was not in the interest of Machakos County that the deputy governor
continues to hold office.
Let's first understand how Mr. Kiala found himself in this position. You see, the Machakos County Assembly was sick of him because the MCAs thought he was soliciting bribes, harassing senior staff, fueling tribal animosity and associating with political detractors of the area governor Alfred Mutua, who, by the way, is very famous for building a better quality road at 3 times the speed and just a third of the cost. But I digress. So the case went to the Senate.
If you can't manage your cabinet, you don't bring to the Senate. We are very serious people. We didn't come to this Senate to joke around.
And just to show you how serious our senators are, they stayed up late, very late, midnight late, to discuss this issue of national and probably international importance.
You took him or her for good, for worse. You will sit and work together for 5 years.
Yes, this marriage was not going to be dissolved regardless of whether one spouse is not wanted by the other spouse or his family.
None of this has sustained the impeachment charges.
But as that marriage continued trotting on the rocks, some other people were on a familiar tune.
Apende wasipende, mambo ya referendum itaendelea. Na tutamfinya kwa ukuta mpaka pesa ikuje mashinani.
I'm sorry, you're going to do what?
Na tutamfinya kwa ukuta mpaka pesa ikuje mashinani.
We're not sure how this is going to work, but if it's going to happen, I want to be there to pick up whatever falls out. Wilson Buru for KTN's Mock the Week.
Not done short distance speed for short distance now. That's why I drop out in almost the last 500 meters.
In the women's race, the big names in long distance running had their fair share of the podium as Commonwealth Games 10,000 meters silver medalist Florence Kiplagat led Irene Chebet and Africa cross country bronze medalist Alisa Prot to third. Nairobi Diamond 10-kilometer run is the first of its kind, and to the athletics fraternity, they hope that more events of this caliber should be organized in order to give them an ample avenue to showcase their talent. Victor Ogale, KTN, at the Hurupa grounds, Nairobi.
To some polo news now. Cruise Control easily won the Samsung Galaxy-sponsored Mugs Mug tournament after overwhelming Custard Snow Leopards 7-4 in an entertaining match at Manyata Polo Club in Gilgil. Snow Leopards started the match by earning a silver platter goal as a result of their low handicap. They later added an off-play goal through Ben Stonewig to stay on the lead before Martin Kizia cancelled it altogether with 3 quick goals for Cruise Control. Keegan Moy added the 4th one to take a 4-2 lead within the first 2 chukas. In the 3rd and 4th chukas, the losers pushed the victors into their half as it became a seesaw affair. Omwale Arunga scored an off-play goal with Kizia managing a penalty and off-play goal in the last 2 chukas to emerge victors.
I feel extremely happy, extremely pleased, delighted, out of this world. Having won today with my son, Keegan, and our nephew, we call him Omakwe. This young man is his first tournament and is the first Mugs Mug, and he wins it. So we are all exhilarated.
Nimefurahi na kucheza na baba na familia ni kitu kubwa sana. So nitaka kushukuru Mungu. Tumekuwa hapa leo.
My contribution was taking the man out because I had a great team behind me, so I knew they could, carry the ball and score the goals. But it was great fun, and I'm happy that I had this team.
After retiring from football, former Kenya international and AFC Leopards goal poacher Maurice Sunguti has decided to give back to society by establishing a football academy, Syokimau Soccer Academy. Sunguti has ordered soccer officials to ensure that young talent is nurtured.
After retiring from competitive football, former Kenya international and AFC Leopards striker Maurice Sunguti has opted to use the skills he learned during his days to nurture upcoming talent through his Syokimau Soccer Academy. Young talent below the age of 14 years in the country are geared to be the base of the Kenyan soccer future and needs to be nurtured.
Ningetaka kuambia wanaosimamia mpira hapa Kenya
tujaribu kama hizi sports academies kuanzia under 10s wazichukulie na umuhimu sana juu hapa hivi ndio future players wanatoka. Tusiangalie tu timu ya Harambee Stars inaenda kucheza, tukifungwa mnaanza kulaumu wachezaji, mnalaumu kocha. Hapana.
It has never been a mistake to dream big. When the youngsters' dream remain valid and if not curbed, Kenya might just remain as spectators in the international soccer scene.
Kama wanaweza kaangaliza academies itatusaidia sana, na in the next 5 to 6 years niko sure nitakuwa na timu nzuri sana hapa hivi. Maybe tutacheza league ya Machakos, then hopefully 2025 tutakuwa tunacheza Premier League ya Kenya.
I would like to play for the Harambee Stars, and I will not agree to be sold to other countries. I would like to play for Kenya.
The just concluded Under-15 National Coca-Cola Championship saw a final that brought together teams from outside Nairobi City, and coaches hold it strong that Nairobi should not be treated as a hub of soccer talent.
Hiyo ndio kitu huwa tunalia sana. Mkiangalia hata leo vile mmeona vijana lazima watafutwe kutoka mashinani hawa wadogo. Ndio pengine tuende World Cup miaka zijazo. Tusipoanzia chini kwa vijana wadogo kama hawa, tusahau kabisa.
Though with little facilities at their disposal, the Syokimau Academy is solely driven by the hope of a better tomorrow. Moses Wahesi, KTN Sports.
Right, let's get to your feedback on our discussion on Checkpoint. At Balala Biz on Twitter, I don't support gays, but the stoning is against Article 25 of the Constitution on inhumane and degrading punishment. And at Odero Alulu, you say stoning to death in public as a deterrence. This is barbaric and a sad day for human rights indeed. And at Lenin Jagi, you say, I agree totally with Mheshimiwa. The society needs to be protected from gayism. We thank you for your feedback. Let's keep this discussion going as, of course, we wait to see whether indeed it'll make it to the floor of the House or not. It's definitely a difficult discussion, but one that must be had. Thank you for your feedback on Twitter and on SMS, and indeed for watching. Have a great week ahead. My name is Ivana Kwara.